Hello, welcome to the next instalment of our Blueprint Bitesize Webinar series. Today we're going to be focusing on one of our SCOTS skills, self-organisation. The others being selflessness, creativity, optimism, tenacity, and then we've obviously got self-organisation here. So just to introduce myself, I'm Scott Riddell, Game Development Manager for the Caledonia Midlands region, and I'll hand over to Fletch.
John Fletcher, Head of Male-Female Pathway and Elite Coach Development.
James Wade, Senior Game Development Manager. Just before we move on, so Fletch, you were kind of involved in creating the SCOTS skills. Why did you kind of pick self-organisation as one? What was kind of like the rationale behind that?
It came from the people who'd been involved in Scottish Rugby, looking at the behaviours, skills, with sort of two lenses really. What sort of stuff we're really good at, let's play to our strengths. What sort of stuff we think, like, if we're better at, that's going to be really helpful as well. Self-organising was definitely an area of strength. I think it leads into adaptability. I'm sure we're going to get into that. Definitely what I've noticed, that when Scottish players play really well, like they'll be doing this really well. So yeah, that was the reason. It's one of the five. And I'm looking forward to getting into it with the Scotty Riddell.
Yeah, nice. We'll crack on. So, as with everything, we wanted to do a wee bit of research prior to this webinar, and we thought, where's the best place to start, and where better than Wikipedia. So, if you happen to be browsing and type in self-organisation into Wikipedia, this is what comes up. Obviously, a ton of information. I'm not going to spend all day going through each of these. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is there's a lot more depth to it than potentially meets the eye. I think people will have done, studies on self-organisation. It might crop up in business. It'll certainly crop up in teams. And just highlighting a few of these words in here and popping them down a wee bit more succinctly. Is anything jumping out there, James?
It was actually one on the previous page, how like black market self-organised. If you take away kind of control and order, people and things will sort themselves out. As we always talk about it, I think it's skateboarding, isn't it? You take away coaches and adults, and actually players, they organise, they get on with things, they coach, they learn together. So that I just saw that at the bottom there. Like, I never really considered. I mean, we're not going to talk about black markets on this podcast too much, but in there, I think typically robust when embedded. I think it's like it takes time for players to become adept to being self-organised, but once it's in place, it allows them, it's a good habit to have for life, for rugby, but also allows you to lay things on top. So that's the one that probably stands out for me, I reckon.
Nice. Anything for you, Fletch?
Yeah, I think just in terms of the descriptor we have, and it's kind of linked into the chaos theory. I think too often, unfortunately, coaches are actually trying to create order too quickly. We know that creating disorder is really important, and then clearly the responsibility of the players with our support and our facilitation is to kind of make some order out of that, and that's ultimately where self-organising comes from a rugby context. So definitely that chaos theory is something that's jumping out from me. I think the coaches who are having the most joy with players moving quite, not necessarily quickly, but certainly like real deep learning, is those who are creating their sessions where there is an opportunity for players to create order out of disorder, and that's kind of what the chaos theory is. It's a bit deeper than that, but that's certainly how I look at it. Which one's yours, Scotty? Like, which one are you thinking?
I think the one on the left there, sufficient energy required. Obviously, that's maybe pulled from a potential chemical side of things on the previous slide, where it's more literal that, energy, if energy is going to cause a physical reaction or a chemical reaction. But if we try and, narrow that down and get us back on rugby, the energy required, from an on-field side of things is potentially going to be a wee bit ugly at times. We're not necessarily going to go into a session having rigid outcomes or intentions. That can be out the window pretty quickly if we're trying to develop self-organisation, because we're going to have to relinquish control. I think and again, like comfortable in chaos. So they're all tying in here, where we're providing, problems for the players to solve, and how they go about that. Like, who's the coach to say one way is right or wrong?
I think that's a really good point about like relinquishing control and stuff there, not requiring control. Like the game itself, like as a coach on a Saturday or Wednesday or Sunday, whenever you coach, you've got no control of time on the pitch. The player's in control of it. So how often in training are we allowing that to happen? Usually when you look at training sessions, it's the coach controls the rules, the scoring system, the time, everything. So it's a really good point when you bring up about the relinquishing control and getting players to kind of manage that themselves.
Yeah, we'll chat about on-field and off-field in a second, but another analogy that springs to mind for me would be the coach isn't on the field with the players when they're playing a match. So who's in charge there? Are the players are they trying to work things out? Are they actively problem solving? Are they able to adapt to the conditions, to the referee, to the opposition, to themselves? The scoreboard. There's a plethora of different things that we're looking for players to self-organise themselves for. So we'll jump on. So off-field then, what are you seeing with that then, Fletch?
Probably on the goes too in terms of would be around coaches must self-organise too. Like I think definitely I'm a big believer in that there is a plan. We've spent some time planning. But I'm also a big believer that in our planning process, like we are just mindful that stuff might not go well. Where might we go? Can we also demonstrate being adaptable, and possibly be quite vulnerable about it? Like I thought it was going to go like this, it's now going like this, so we're going to go with it. That type of mentality and that type of language to play, I think, is really helpful. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm going. It's definitely my bias because I'm not that organised as a coach. I definitely have a destination and an end point, and I'm going to it. And I want to spend a lot of time thinking and planning and having some conversations. Ideally, try to prime the players in the environment as much as I possibly can. That's going to be helpful. But then,
what do you mean by priming them?
Priming just to sort of give them some information that's going to be helpful. So ultimately, we want to set problems that allows the players and the teams to sort of search and then use that information to coordinate themselves. So you might want to just get them thinking about it, already having conversations and curious about it before they get there. We spoke on one of the last webinars a little bit around this pre-mortem as a thought. I think coaches need to be more skillful around the information that they share prior to activity. I think we can nudge them, give some hints, just to get people thinking. I think it's important.
How would you prime your players, James?
I think it's important just not chuck players in the deep end, especially when you're shifting away. This is a big shift for a lot of coaches. I think sometimes it can come across as a bit disarming if you go, right, you're now in charge of X, Y, Z. There's one there about knowing self, knowing players, philosophy, things like that, and actually spend a bit of time to look at who's going to be quite good at this, what kind of help do they need, what kind of people do they need around them to help them to take ownership of, whether that's conditioning, that might be attack, defence, feedback on the sessions, whatever it is. I think it's important to spend a bit of time getting to know the players and rather than just chucking it in. And we see it quite a lot. It's really well intended. Players go take the warm up, but unless it's kind of we call it scaffolding. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know how you're going to do it? Here's some examples of how you can do it. I'll help you for the first few sessions, something like that. So I think it's really important just to spend that time kind of, putting the groundwork in to make sure that it can be effective and they feel supported in doing so.
Nice.
Which one for you, Mike? Which one are the coloured boxes?
Yeah, I think that the green one, personal preparation. I think that's something we take for granted from time to time. Where, is it as low level as organising your own kit bag, as having clean boots, as organising a snack post training, as bringing your own water bottle. I think these skills, maybe not to have sweeping generalisations, but in society these days, can we ask a wee bit more of our players? For example, are they reviewing the session? Are they actively reflecting? Are they coming to you with clips if you're in that sort of environment? I think those skills can certainly be worked on, and they're definitely an area we can develop.
It's kind of just what about because I'm definitely hearing some coaches shout at the radio or their laptop, but our coach underrates, what's going on, this is crazy. Surely you just want them to be in cues and lines and and wait their turn. Like, well, what's your thoughts around how you would introduce this to the younger players? Because that's certainly something that I hear, that young people are not as capable as older players. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, everyone likes a wee choice, don't they? You know, is it which game? Can we plan that we have 4 games that the players can choose, and you maybe set some guide rails, as Jane mentioned, that we're going to play 2 of these games. Which 2 do you want to play out of 4, out of 6? There may be games that we know, and we can be skillful as a coach to adapt those games that we know we're achieving outcomes, but the players feel in control. We can maybe let them choose how they score or who needs a bit more support. But geez, it's not easy under 8s. That is pretty wild out there. But I think they'll surprise you. I mean, I've got wee ones. They will surprise you with their creativity. They will come up with things, or they will have themes that they can relate to, whether it's cartoons or, you know, things they've picked up on. Language potentially. Are you speaking their language? And the more we can ask them and co-create and create games that get them, you know, bought in, then I think that it can be really powerful. So I think recommend trying it.
I always think back to that when I was a DO and we ran festivals, and whenever a team's not playing, you look at the kids and they're running around playing tag and playing different games, and ultimately they'll self-organise and play. So I think it's as coaches coming forward, and we talk about in the Blueprint, we've got the muckabout as a bit of a session design block, that actually if you just leave a few balls out, a few bits of equipment, the players will ultimately be curious and create their own games. And we've seen it loads. I remember once even at uni, we had a load of footballs out and rugby balls out. It was like, which ones do you reckon I'll go for? And all of them got the football out, started playing Wembley, or whatever you call it up here, heads and volleys and things like that. So players on the whole will self-organise and play, especially in our environment. So I think we see it all around us, but as coaches, can we create that in our sessions and allow time for that?
Yeah. So kind of leads on for the younger, but why do you think it doesn't happen as much as what we would like it to happen in some environments? Like, what's getting in the way of this off-field development, self-organising? Like, what's the handbrakes?
Geez, I think there's maybe a wee bit of, you know, we were never afforded that, so this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And I think there's maybe a little bit of fear of, you know, maybe being exposed potentially. So there's a little bit of like letting go of you know, control. And we mentioned that previously. Wikipedia says so. So
Wikipedia says so.
It also says it requires energy. So it's not just going to happen as well. It's not you're not just going to click your fingers. You're not just going to have one session that, oh geez, our players are self-organising now. You're going to have to work at it. So we'll look at a couple of on-field things we could maybe do as well now. And some of these are coaching process. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Fletch. Listen. What would that? Why would that help self-organisation?
Yeah, I think clearly we are searching, and we're searching for information. Like, that's what we're trying to do. Ultimately, that's what coaches are doing. We're setting problems, we're setting up situations, scenarios, and we're trying to support the players. And like, searching, scanning was probably a word that we're more comfortable with, and listening's part of scanning. So actually, definitely having those skills to listen and understand the different levels of listening. I think it's a clue. 2 ears, 1 mouth. And that, like, just be like twice as good at listening as you're talking. It is a skill. You can get better at it. Some people appear to be more like they're in a better place than others. But yeah, listening is really important. Taking in the information, just taking as much information as you can. That builds your awareness. Like, obviously you have information, then it's like you're much more likely to make some good decisions based on that. Nice. So that's where I think listening comes in. How would you do it? Like, how would you develop listening as a coach? Like, how are you developing your listening skills in your players?
You've got to give them a reason to listen, I think, first and foremost. So it is creating situations whereby they actually have to communicate to us. So we talk about relinquishment control. When we do games, we usually tell both teams the kind of rules, what's happening, but actually we do talk about a lot, withhold information. So actually, as the game's going on, the players actually have to talk and figure out, why is that player, for example, been allowed to run through, or why is the referee blowing up every time that we do this? It's just creating the environment so there's meaningful conversation, and if there's meaningful conversation, you kind of have to listen. for example, we see a lot. Well, there's games where they're like, you must do this, you must do that. There's no need to communicate because the game has dictated what you need to do. So I think it's just allowing meaningful conversation. And the big thing is withholding information. Can we give a player like, you can do this? No one else knows that. They'll know you have to figure it out what the rule is. You did it really well on the advanced coaching course the other day, and it created a bit of tension, and people were really trying to figure out what to do, and we're getting quite argumentative, like, no, they can do this, you can do that. I don't think that's the case. They're having to listen to each other and figure it out.
Yeah, Fletch, you can choose the next topic.
I'm going next topic as well. I just want to check in one of listening. A good one is to ask them to play back. So occasionally, just like the players who you are having some conversation, just like, what was that person saying, or what have you heard, type stuff. So they're definitely good tactics. You want people to be attentive. You might want to ask them what they've heard, type stuff. I'm going to go one more. I'm going to go levels of challenge. Why do you think that's on there, Scott? What were you thinking about?
Well, if it was easy, everyone would do it. So I think having an appropriate challenge will stimulate the problem-solving element. I think in terms of, if we're talking about youths or kids, then there is, a gaming culture potentially, and it's linked into the language that we chat to the players with, and we can maybe link topics, and we can also progress. If we can hit a 10-meter pass running at pace, why can't we do 12, 14? Is that the next levels? That's maybe something quite technical, but having scoring systems embedded into that as well, where they can gain rewards for performing skills more effectively, or scoring more points, or scoring faster. I think the more we can be creative about how many points can you score in 10 minutes, let's not set boundaries. Let's set challenges where they can achieve something as well. If we have that in every session, that you come away from that session having achieved something, there's a huge sense of fulfillment as well. And ultimately want players coming back eager for that next challenge. And if we can manage that, if we can plan for that as coaches, then I think it's something really, really powerful.
It's quite linked to the one next to it, the set problems but provide support thing. So I was thinking, like, we did it at the Blueprint filming when we gave a game, and in the Blueprint resource of the spice levels, different like levels of difficulty. And actually, when you put it to players, a lot of them want to get to the most difficult one and see how they get on. And it's allowing them to kind of just explore it. Right? If you could change something, what would that be? Oh, well, let's make this a bit easier. A bit of support, a few constraints to help them through it. So players will ultimately kind of find their level. I think we don't trust players enough to kind of want to challenge themselves, potentially. So actually, because one of my worst habits, I start easy and I build up quite linearly. Like, we were good at that, we move on to this. Well, actually, it's out wrong. We're just going, there's the hardest version of this game. Let's see how we get on. Because you'll be amazed at what players come up with in the end.
Yeah, I think you're better informed as a coach.
Yeah.
Starting at a certain level, as you mentioned, definitely made me think about the levels there. That's kind of something that they'd be used to at the curriculum, school. So that's definitely something they'd be comfortable. The key around levels is, again, choice. Which level do you want to play? You definitely get to, this is the stuff that's enthusiasm, they enjoy. And then that element of mastery. That's ultimately what the gamers will say. It's like, I want to go back to level 4 and I actually just want to master it. Like, I want to get the best time in the world type stuff. So there's lots of stuff around the levels. If I had one thing, because I think this is what's getting in the way out of all of these, like if it's not done well, what's the role of mistakes around self-organisation?
I think that there's probably going to be quite a lot of mistakes if people are finding solutions to things, then the best way to work out a different way of doing things is to fail. So I think there will be mistakes. The role of mistakes, I think, is something that is really important as well, because there's an understanding that there would be different types of mistakes. Players might be stretching themselves, trying to take themselves out of their comfort zone a little bit. They might be learning. They might be in a stage of learning something new. So are we comfortable with that? Do we understand the link to the challenge? Then there might be more mistakes in that element or that part of the session, and we're comfortable with that.
I discovered this kind of like, I'm not a bad referee, but once I was refereeing a game at uni and I didn't do it very well, but just watching how the players reacted to that, so how they organised with like the injustice of my refereeing of the game, I found quite interesting because it reflected in kind of like how they deal with things that maybe aren't going right in a game on a Wednesday. So actually, can we purposefully create an environment where there's mistakes going on to help other players react to it as well? That's something that I kind of accidentally picked up. I like to say I did it on purpose, but definitely not the case.
Yeah, mistakes will happen in the game, won't they? So
So how do you react to that? Can we create that environment of tension in the training session at certain levels, obviously?
Yeah, I think it's I think we've got a role as coaches, like even on our language. You know, how do we embrace mistakes? Like, what's our like? Do we get excited when somebody makes one? I mean,
Stretch errors, isn't it? Like if someone's making a mistake and they're really going for it at a high pace, that's exciting, isn't it?
I mean, the chances are that the crowd won't be cheering when you drop the ball, but maybe they should if they understand learning. So I mean, there's a couple of things like fail just stands for first attempt in learning. Yeah. I mean, and ultimately there will be some failure. If there's not, you should be designing it. As part of your session design, you should be designing for stuff not to go well. That's our job. We create disorder and they create order. That's kind of like obviously the what we spoke about earlier. And Yoda, I mean, apart from Neil Graham, he's the cleverest person I know, and he said this. He said, "Learning, mistakes, the biggest learning it is." I was going to do it in a Yoda accent, but I'm not very good at Yoda. So if Yoda thinks mistakes are really important around learning and people getting better, then there need to be. I mean, that's one of the awesome stuffs around self-organising is that like just our relationship with stuff not going well. We just put it where it should be, which is, look, this is really important. We should be celebrating it. We should be designing it anyway. We understand it's important. So that's where we are around self-organising.
Yeah, class. Some final thoughts there from Fletch, essentially, just to tie it back in. But we really enjoyed that. I'll speak for the two other guys. Really enjoyed.
Enjoyed it.
I did miss self-organising. But yeah, just thanks everyone for listening. If you'd like to check out some more information, check out our Twitter page at Scott Rugby Coach on Twitter, and if you want to tweet and tag us in, and we can maybe connect with you online. #ChangeOurGame, #Blueprint Rugby. Cheers and now.